Well, the latest unemployment figures for February are out this morning and are an indicator, of course, for the future of interest rates and the prosperity of Australian families at the end of the day. Business Editor Ross Greenwood is with me. Ross, good morning to you. What's it expected to look like?
Look, it's expected to be flat today, around 4.1%. And if you go back to, say, November, December, then through January, the unemployment rate has ticked up from 3.9% in November up to 4.1% in January, and it's expected to stay there. There's one little thing about this, though, is that if you go back 12 months, what you noticed was that the unemployment rate ticked up in January, and that's because a lot of people, particularly casuals, actually went out of the workforce during January, basically to have a holiday, and went back into the workforce in February. And so as a result, the unemployment rate ticked down last February. So don't be surprised if there is that same sort of pattern of behaviour from people, because you certainly saw that last month. A lot of people literally exited the workforce knowing that they had work to come, and so came back in. But as you point out, this is important for interest rates. The next interest rate decision from the Reserve Bank is very much expected to be on hold. But the reality is also, as you go into the election, this is one area of good news for the government. The reality is that a lot of Australians have jobs, that the fact that they've maintained their jobs means that they've also been able to at least cope with the cost of living. They've not liked it, but they've been able to manage, because without a job you cannot cope. And so this really is, if you like, one of the bright stars for the government going into the election. The second part of this is also that it's had this policy with the Reserve Bank of trying to drift inflation down. Well, there's clear evidence that that's now taking place, which is the reason why we've seen one interest rate cut here in Australia. But the reality is that post-election, we're likely to see more of those taking place as well.
Oh, well, that's some good news. I'm sure many Australians will be wanting that. I mean, Ross, interest rates, interestingly, were kept on hold in America overnight. Now, there was no real surprise about that, but some say the door is open for more rate cuts there.
That's right. And the reason for that is, again, the United States. Inflation seems to be drifting off. But the real concern there is about tariffs. And so the issue of tariffs on goods coming into America. We're hearing about pharmaceuticals here today and about the sort of pharmaceuticals coming from Australia to the United States. The point is that that does push up prices in America. And so the concern is that inflation will rise in America as a result of tariffs. But to be fair, it's a one-off. And the Federal Reserve last night indicated that it would look through this. So if we see Jerome Powell, the chair of the US Federal Reserve, said it can be the case that it's appropriate sometimes to look through inflation if it's going to go away quickly without action by us, if it's transitory. And that would be the case, because do remember, if you impose tariffs, it has a one-off effect on inflation. Therefore, the Federal Reserve or our Reserve Bank would look through that and ultimately look to the longer-term trend for inflation. But the reality is it would still increase prices for those people consuming those goods in America.
And Ross, today, I mean, how has the local stock market opened?
Well, it's going to be better, and the reality is, because of those messages out of the US Federal Reserve, the American stock markets were also better. So we have a quick glance at the Australian stock market, up by almost 0.25%, 21 points, reclaiming some of the losses that it's had over the past few weeks or so, with US tech stocks particularly smashing markets, not just here but around the world as well. The Australian dollar also has ticked up a little, sitting at around 63 1/3 US cents as we speak.